Is she? Yeah. The microphones are on.
Cute little kid in the front row.
I don't know how many chairs there are. I don't see an empty spot. I see.
Yeah, there. See.
We could bring a few chairs in.
It's Eric over there.
They're only here for the swearing in.
I know. That's,
Short term now, just leave it
we're at 9 o'clock. Good morning. We're going to call the Scott County Board of Commissioners annual meeting to order. It's January 8th, 2019. Would you all please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good morning again for January 8th, 2019, and today is a culmination of a lot of campaigning and that type of stuff here, and so we're going to start with the swearing in of Commissioner Michael Beard. So, Michael, front, yeah, I see.
Down front like this.
Yep, go right down in the front down here. Take the long way if you want. Yeah.
Good morning and Happy New Year. I'm Judge David Knudsen and a longtime friend of Michael's and of John Ulrich, so it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to swear both of them in today. There you go.
And thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Good seeing you.
Absolutely.
Somebody's got to hold this while we
I can hold it.
do that.
All right, if you please repeat after me. I, Michael Beard,
I, Michael Beard,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge
and I will faithfully execute and discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Scott County Commissioner, District 3,
of Scott County Commissioner District 3
in the County of Scott,
in the County of Scott,
State of Minnesota,
great state of Minnesota,
according to the law
according to the law,
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You sign this right now?
Do you need a pen?
No. Got a pen.
Pretty soon it's going to be electronic. Thank you. Well done.
Maybe at the reception, if you want to ask me stories about David Knudsen.
You don't want to ask those.
All right. Thank you
Commissioner
very
Ulrich.
much. Commissioner Ulrich.
Commissioner Ulrich, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, John Ulrich,
I, John Ulrich,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge
that I will faithfully execute and discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Scott County Commissioner, District 5,
of Scott County Commissioner, District 5,
in the County of Scott,
in the County of Scott,
State of Minnesota,
State of Minnesota,
according to the law,
according to the law,
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
John, congratulations.
Thank you. I'd also say Judge Knudsen actually married my son and daughter-in-law just this last, what was it, May?
Great,
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. for-
Wonderful young couple.
Yeah. He was also their counselor, so, pre-marriage counselor. Good guy.
Congratulations. Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Have a great year.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move to the sheriff, Luke Hennon.
Judge Wilton here. He's a leader of our drug treatment court himself and Rex Stacy. So I had Rex Stacy swear me in 2.5 years ago, and today I'm going to have Judge Wilton swear me in. I think it's a great program, and they're doing good things in their community. So thank you,
Morning.
sir.
All right, you ready, Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
All right. I, Luke W. Hennon,
I, Luke W. Hennon,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I'll support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully execute
and I'll faithfully execute
and discharge the duties
and discharge the duties
of the office of Scott County Sheriff
of the office of Scott County Sheriff
in the County of Scott, Minnesota,
in the County of Scott, Minnesota,
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
and the best of my ability and understanding.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to have our attorney, county attorney, Ron Horsevar.
Straighten them up a little bit. Ready? I, Ronald Hosevar,
I, Ronald Hosevar,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully execute
and that I will faithfully execute
and discharge the duties
and discharge the duties
of the office of Scott County Attorney
of the office of Scott County Attorney
in the County of Scott, Minnesota,
in the County of Scott, Minnesota,
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
Congratulations. We're gonna sign this, we're gonna sign another one.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I didn't know you were Scott County Sheriff also. Thank you.
Does it say he's a sheriff too?
Yeah.
Better talk to Luke about that.
Yeah, that's it. Sign right
No,
there.
let's just have to do it again.
Okay.
We'll wait on that then.
So I'm gonna do that.
With that, we're going to move to our county administrator, Leslie Vermillion.
Good morning, I'm Judge Lennon, and we are bringing up the rear for gender equity.
Judge Lennon is the chair of our Justice Steering Committee, and it's just brought structure and data and some really good things to that committee, so.
Which is a challenge. All right, I'm going to have you stand actually on this side because we want the photo ops to work out. You can put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. I'll have you repeat after me. I, Leslie Vermillion,
I, Leslie Vermillion,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge
the duties of the office of Scott County Administrator
the office of the Scott County Administrator
in the County of Scott, State of Minnesota,
in the County of Scott, State of Minnesota,
according to the law
according to the law
and the best of my ability and understanding.
and the best of my ability and understanding.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all, and congratulations to all of our newly elected people. With that, we're going to go on to the reorganization for 2019, and that's, the first one's going to be a nomination, an election for the chair position, and you guys would wait 2 minutes, I'll be done. I promise. Okay, with that, there is a nomination now on the floor for Commissioner Barb Beckman-Brecky.
Housekeeping, you might want to announce we have a reception right after this.
Oh, yeah. We do have a reception after this, so I think that they already got a head start on that, so
Okay, good.
just in case anyone didn't know.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay. So there is a nomination for Commissioner Weckman-Brecky on the floor.
Second.
There's a nomination, only we're not, is there anybody else that would like to be nominated, sorry? Anyone else? Anyone else? With that, I will make a motion to close those nominations and have Barb Beckman-Brecky be our new board chair. Is there a second?
I will second it again.
There is a second. Any more discussion? Any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll open up nominations for vice chair.
Madam Chair, I will move that we nominate Commissioner David Beer to be vice chair of the county board.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Nominations will now close.
Madam Chair, I'll put forward the motion to elect David Beer as our vice chair.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to elect David Beer as our vice chair. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign.
All right.
Motion carried. All right. Before we recess for our reception, I have one additional item of business. We'd like to thank outgoing chair Tom Wolf for his service. So, Tom, thank you. We have a plaque here for you. It says, "An appreciation for your outstanding service as chair of the Scott County Board for 2018. And I'd like to thank you for your service, for running efficient meetings, and for being involved and visible all over Scott County on our behalf. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I can say just a couple of words.
Please.
I just want to just thank my fellow commissioners. It's a pleasure working with you all. I know we sometimes have disagreements, but we figure them out rationally, not like what goes on in some other places. Anyhow, and the administration has been great, the staff, everybody, my constituents, and my wife and family. So thank you all.
Thank you.
You're gonna have one more party.
Don't text and drive.
All right, and with that, we'll recess until 9:30 for the reception honoring the newly sworn-in officials, and we'll reconvene at 9:30.
All right.
All right, let's reconvene the January 8th, 2019 meeting of the Scott County Board of Commissioners. Next on our agenda is amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? If not, it'll stand approved as distributed. Next up on the agenda is the minutes of the December 18th, 2018 County Board meeting. Fellow commissioners, you received these minutes in your packet. Do you have any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Madam Chair, I'll move the minutes to be approved as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the December 18th, 2018 County Board meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next, we will have time for the recognition of interested citizens. This part of the agenda is limited to items that are not on the agenda, and the limit is 5 minutes per person or subject. If you're here to speak to the board, please approach the podium and provide your name and address and tell us the topic you'd like to discuss.
Good morning, my name is John Meiser. Is this overhead thing going so I could show some things, if I may?
And Madam Chair, if I may, I will run a timer, a 5-minute timer, and I will give you a 1 minute when there's 1 minute left.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
So, once this is up and ready, we're ready to start?
There we go. I think it's
Okay.
up.
Well, congratulations to all the newly elected and sworn-in officials today. Congratulations. The reason I'm coming here is I'm aware that can that zoom in? Is, when you take an oath of office, it's a promise to uphold the law. And so if the officials today that were sworn in had not taken an oath of office, Minnesota legislature has provided a rule called vacancy 350-102. And it says every office shall become vacant upon the happening of either of the following events before the expiration of the term of office. And I direct your attention to number 6. It would talk about the incumbent's refusal or neglect to take the oath of office, or to give a renewed official bond, or to deposit such file of oath or bond within the time period prescribed. Now, there's a little wiggle room there because they don't say what's the time period prescribed. But Minnesota 358.05, which is taking an oath of office, states that before you conduct any business, you are to take an oath of office. So an oath is apparently something that's very important. So before any of you guys today were conducting business, the first thing you did was to take an oath of office. So then you could assume your office. However, if you didn't, for some reason, within some period of time period prescribed, you would vacate an office. So you wouldn't be able to hold that office. And there would only be 2 ways to get a vacant office. You'd either have to run for re-election, or you'd have to be appointed. So who tells us when somebody has passed the time period prescribed? How long a period of time is it? Is it a week? Is it a day? Is it a month? Is it a year? So I'm really curious of what is the time period prescribed when somebody then has officially vacated an office. And it also tells us you can't do any duties of the office until you're qualified. So I'm not qualified. We couldn't sit today, and some of you folks couldn't conduct business today until you were actually qualified. So in my case, I was involved in a case, and I went through and I said, hey, I'd like to find out if the judge on my case took an oath of office. So this is the request of the form that you make to the Secretary of State. And it came back, and this is a certified copy, and you can see they wrote some notes on there, and I was looking for her oath of office of 2010. She had been appointed the year prior and then ran for election and was elected. So she had an appointment oath, but I wanted to find out if she now had an elected oath. Much like Luke Hennon today. He had an appointed oath, and now he has an elected oath. So the Secretary of State, see that was December 26, 2012. They came back on January 2nd, 2013, and they said oath not found. No oath found. So according to vacancies, she vacated the office because there wasn't an oath on file. Now, we still don't know if she took an oath, but according to that, she vacated the office. And she should have had an oath back in 2010. Now it's 2012, 2013, 3 years later. She finally did file an oath. She filed an oath on January 18th, 2013, 3 years later. It was then filed with the Secretary of State 5 days later. So my question to this body, because you guys are all here to uphold the law, could you please tell me what is the time period prescribed that somebody is to take an oath and then become qualified to hold an office? I'm wondering because I have been unable to figure this out. Ron, I'm wondering, Ron, if you could help me figure out what is the time period prescribed for somebody to take and file an oath, to actually be able to then, did they vacate the office? How long a period of time do you get to go? 1 minute? Thanks, Dave. So I don't know if this body would be willing to consider that, but to make a request of Ron or somebody, I don't know who, to find out what is the time period prescribed, and did this, in this particular case, did they vacate their office? And if they vacated their office, then they're not allowed to hold an office. And then if they vacated an office, and then they ran for an election subsequent to that, what kind of information did they give the Secretary of State? Did they tell them that they were an incumbent? Because you can't be an incumbent if you vacated an office. You would have to be running for an election normally. So when she ran for re-election, did she file her certificate as an incumbent? Or was she allowed to, when she filed this oath, was she able to re-get her oath? Because the time period prescribed in this case could be 3 years. But I saw everyone here today take their oath.
All
5
right.
seconds or 5 minutes is done.
5 minutes is done. Thank you, Mr. Meiser. This board doesn't have jurisdiction over district court judges, so I don't know that we know the answer to your question, but thank you for bringing it to our attention today.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on to, are there any other interested citizens who would like to speak? All right, let's move on to new employee welcome. Commissioner Beer and I were fortunate enough to meet with 3 of our new employees this morning. We'd love to have them come up to the podium and introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves. So come on up, ladies. Yeah, all 3 of you can go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Samantha England. I started last Monday, December 31st. I'm coming from Candiota County. I've been there for almost 5 years before I came here, and I'm working as a financial assistance specialist as a lead worker under Jamie over down at the Workforce Center. And I am married. My husband is IT down at the city of Minnetonka, and that's what brought us down this way. And I have 2 kids, almost 3-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Thank you, and welcome to Scott County.
Good morning. My name is Laura Collins Ausmus. Today is my 5th day, so I'm still pretty new. I'm a therapist in the mental health center. I come from a smaller agency up in Minnetonka, so this is a really cool change for me. Let's see, I have a 4-month-old, so if you notice some dark circles under my eyes, that's why. They're love circles. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Bethany Hoffman, and I've been working here since the 2nd, but I've actually been a contract employee here since June, so I'm now officially a government employee. I do live in Chanhassen. I moved here in 2012 from Pennsylvania. I heard there's a Pennsylvania fan, maybe.
Where in Pennsylvania?
I'm from right outside Philadelphia, but I've lived in Central and Pittsburgh. So
Okay, go Steelers.
anywhere along the, once you live in Pittsburgh, you're a Steelers fan. Go Vikings. What else? I'm a parent of 3 children, and I've toggled between the nonprofit, corporate, museum world, and finance, so I've done a little bit of everything, and now I'm here. So.
And what department did you say you worked
Oh,
in?
I'm sorry. I work in Health and Human Services in the accounting.
Oh, okay, great.
All right, well, thank you. Let's welcome all our new employees. We're really glad to have you here, as Commissioner Beer and I talked about this morning. It's employees that really allow us to serve the citizens, to steward tax dollars, and to do the work that we're charged with. So thank you for choosing public service. Thank you for choosing Scott County, and look forward to getting to know you better. So thank you very much. On to the consent agenda. The consent agenda are items that have been previously discussed and worked on in workshops and other settings, and typically pass in one motion. I'll go ahead and read the items on the consent agenda and then ask my fellow commissioners if there's any items to be pulled from that agenda. So 9.1, adopt resolution number 2019-001, appointing commissioners and other county officials to boards and committees for 2019. 9.2, adopt resolution number 2019-002, adopting the Scott County Board of Commissioners operating rules and guidelines and rescinding resolution number 2018-002. Item 9.3, approve the 2019 County Board meeting schedule. 9.4, approve the reappointment of Fred Corrigan of Commissioner District 3 and the appointment of Bruce Loney of Commissioner District 4 to the Prairie Lake Spring Lake Watershed District Board of Managers for terms effective March 3rd, 2019 through March 2nd, 2022. 9.5, adopt resolution number 2019-005, designating the city of Elko New Market as the responsible government unit for the Edelman Property Alternative Urban Area-Wide Review, AUAR, environmental study through a memorandum of agreement. Item 9.6, approve the request for rezoning of 80 acres from UER Urban Expansion Reserve to UER-C Urban Expansion Reserve Cluster. Lori Davis is the applicant and Judith M. Williams, the Revocable Trust, is the property owner in Section 32 of New Market Township. 9.7, authorize acceptance of grant funds from the Minnesota Department of Human Services for the Children's Mental Health Screening Grant. 9.8, adopt resolution number 2019-003, awarding the qualified newspaper bid and designating the Belle Plaine Herald newspaper as the qualified newspaper for 2019, 2020, and 2021. Adopt resolution, 9.9, adopt resolution number 2019-004, designating the Jordan Independent to publish the second printing of the financial statement during 2019, 2020, and 2021. And finally, 9.10, to approve payroll processing of personnel actions. That's the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I will make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the items, the 10 items on the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the 10 items on the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, we'll move on to item number 10, to consider and approve the 2019 Scott County Legislative Priority Package. Claire Roebling's going to discuss that matter with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Today is an appropriate day to be doing this. There is a lot happening in St. Paul. All of the legislators will be sworn in. The new governor was sworn in yesterday. So there's a lot of talk and discussion going on about issues that they will be dealing with in the upcoming session. And so here we are talking about what we would like them to be dealing with as well. And we did get a chance to talk about these during the board workshop in December, and I just wanted to review them with you again and get your approval. And of course, things will come up that are not on here that maybe we want to support or maybe we want to oppose, and typically we'll work with the chair and vice chair on those issues as they arise as needed. So we want to start out with our transportation priorities. And one of the things that we know is coming forward from Hennepin and Ramsey County is a request to change the distribution of the motor vehicle lease sales tax. And we're actually quite happy. Deb, how do I do this? And right now, this is a major source of funding for Scott County. In fact, as Leslie will point out, this is really bigger than if there was a gas tax increase. This really matters to us because it brings in a good chunk of change. And right now, the money from the motor vehicle lease sales tax is divided 38% for county state aid highway to the 5 metro counties. And then it also goes into the Highway User Distribution Fund, and then the Minnesota Transportation Fund or Transit Fund, Greater Minnesota Transit Fund gets money as well. So there's a move to bring in Hennepin and Ramsey into the 5 suburban county group, which would divide that. It is currently based on population. If that were to be changed and continue to be based on population, you can imagine how significantly our share would go down, being one of the smaller counties in that group. So we will be continuing to monitor and work on that issue as the session proceeds. The next one is to support funding for local bridges, local roads, turnback accounts, and state programs such as Corridors of Commerce and the TED Fund. And we believe that they could look at options for enhancing funding for transportation by utilizing the sales tax on auto parts being distributed to the Highway User Trust Fund, and to utilize the one-time fund balance to complete projects such as updates to Highway 169 from Marshall Road to 494, or reconstruction of the 35W 494 interchange. And even though that's outside of Scott County, it's something that you have always been very supportive of because you know how it affects our commuters. Another issue in transportation is to support continued funding for suburban transit and the reverse routes, especially Minnesota Valley Transit Authority's Route 495, which has received some special funding in the past. And we could do that by revising the formula to allocate additional regionally administered motor vehicle sales tax to suburban transit providers.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
clarify that last, the RAM thing you talked about on the last slide.
The Rambus,
Yeah, who's in charge of distributing that and allocating?
I believe it's currently done through statute, and it could be modified.
So the
No, oh, Leslie says no.
The Metropolitan Council, I think,
That's what I was
makes the
wondering.
decision on how the Rambus is distributed.
Just a chunk of money goes to Met Council, then they make up who's gonna get what then? Okay,
They're negotiating back and forth on what the percentage should be for the regular MVest and then also RAMVest. Actually, those items that you, are really two separate ones, the 495 and so forth, that first part which we're asking for is really a bonding request, and the other is an ongoing policy.
Madam Chair, if I'm, who are they negotiating with? Division with
Well, with
Suburban
the,
Transit. With the SDA?
opt-outs are, STA, Suburban Transit, is negotiating with the Met Council, and but they want to get it in statute what those percentages are.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
And John.
The next one, oh, wait, I went one too far, is one that we've seen before and have not been successful with, which would be to change the procedures for eminent domain, just to change the dates when the property owner, if they have had an appraisal done, which the acquiring agency will pay for an appraisal, but if they've had that done, we're asking that they share that with the agency that would be acquiring the property earlier in the process so that there would be more time for negotiations. We think that this could be beneficial to both the property owner and the acquiring agency. It is a difficult thing to change anything in the eminent domain statutes, but we have been plugging along, and we do have a fair amount of support for it in other local government entities especially, but we are still working on legislative support. Also, we would like to fund the local wetland replacement program at a higher level. We've kind of been limping along. They give us $5 million annually almost, and it runs out, or it's close to running out in many of the transportation districts. And without this money available, it could literally stop transportation projects. So we're hoping to get an infusion of money into that fund. Moving to parks and trails, we would like to retain the legacy fund allocation formula for parks and trails. And currently we get 40% of that money for Metro Parks, and 40% goes to the DNR and 20% to Greater Minnesota Parks. And we are asking that no change be made in the formula. This is the year they would be looking at it. They had a 3-year deal. It's expired now. And Greater Minnesota is thought to be wanting more of that money, or at least their legislators are. Yesterday I did hear some good news. I went to a Metro Parks meeting, and they had someone from the Legacy Advisory Committee there, and he said that the Greater Minnesota advocates seem to be satisfied with the formula, but we know that some of their legislators are not. And one of the other things they have suggested is to leave the formula for like up to the forecasted amount of money that comes into that fund at this level, at the 40-40-20. But almost always there's additional money that is available above the forecast. It's been performing quite well. And there has been a suggestion that that money be split a third, a third, a third. And there is some concern among the Metro Parks folks that that's the camel's nose under the tent, and that it could lead to further erosion of this fund for us. So we'll be watching that very carefully. Also looking for, to replace the Metro Parks bond funds with general obligation bonds if a lawsuit against the state is successful relating to the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. More good news on that. Yesterday we heard that Representative Rick Hansen, who I believe is also chairing the Environment Finance Committee in the House, has put together a bill already to do exactly this if we fail in the lawsuit, that we would convert that money that would be paid from the Environmental Trust Fund to general obligation bonds. And I truly believe that the legislators are likely to do that. I don't think they'd leave us all hanging out there without the promised funding. They would likely switch and make them general obligation bonds. So I'm glad to know that we have somebody in a good position already looking at that issue. The next one is on our metropolitan governance that we've been advocating change for some time. Wait, oh, sorry. My finger moved to the wrong one. I know you are all quite familiar with this one. I won't spend much time on it. Our main position is that we want compliance with the federal highway that says that transportation issues are supposed to be decided by a board that is made up of a majority of elected officials. And Met Council's been grandfathered in, but there's opportunities that we think that could change, or else go to the legislature and look for opportunities to have them change the law so that we could change the makeup of the council. So we could for sure get a majority. We actually have a plan to have all elected officials on there, city and county, township possibly too. But the terms would be staggered as well. We just think there would be more accountability and transparency with elected officials. We're the only agency like that in the country that does not have elected officials on it, which is very, very unique. Moving to Health and Human Services, because of a waiting list in our county and many others, we have a priority to increase access to the basic sliding fee childcare program. And this helps also with economic development, because we know that if people can't, I must have skipped one too many again. Just a second, here we go. If people can't find childcare, and we just heard from our newest employees, they all have young children too, they won't be able to come to work. And so it is an economic development issue as well. And then another one is to eliminate the child protection withhold requirements. And Scott County, and I think Pam is here, has not had this money withheld from us yet, but there is always the possibility that it could happen, that we wouldn't quite meet the exact standards that they are setting forth. And it seems kind of counterproductive to punish you by withholding money if you're not able to do the job that they've asked you to do. So it doesn't encourage you, once you're losing money, to get out of it. It just makes it that much more difficult. And this was in the bill last year that got vetoed. I do expect that it will be one of the first ones considered again this year. But we have to make sure that it happens. I know that AMC and I believe Micah are also supportive of it. Then we move on to elections.
Claire, I think there were two other Health and Human Services ones, health insurance coverage and the mental health system.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Oh, this one right here?
Yep.
Yes, I'm sorry. To maintain health insurance coverage for low-income Minnesotans. That is one where we have the 2% provider tax. It is going to be expiring at the end of this year. And of course, there's been talk about renewing that or looking at other options and how they can fund that so we do not have a lot of people moving into the uninsured category, with the fear that counties in particular would be picking up a lot of the slack if that happens. The mandates don't always go away, but the money could, and that is a very big concern for counties right now. Also, to provide adequate funding for infrastructure and continuum of care for the mental health system. We have been working hard on this ourselves. Our infrastructure is under development, and it did get some funding from the state. But of course, we need ongoing funding for operations and also looking at grants like to support the school districts for mental health. That is very important and a high priority issue that even affects school safety. Okay, moving on to elections then. We would like to eliminate the mandate to publish the sample ballot and allow counties to instead publish a notice directing voters to where they can find sample ballots specific to their voting precincts. Right now, they publish a ballot that has everybody on it. But if you go into the polling place, half of the names won't be on it because they're not specific to your precinct. And people get very confused by that. They can see who all the candidates are, but they don't know specifically who they're going to be voting for. So we think it would be better to send them to a website or someplace where they would be able to find a sample of their specific ballot. And they are available already through the Secretary of State's site. But we just get a notice in the paper saying where those are and not have to publish them ourselves. Also eliminate the need to tally write-in votes for local election races unless the candidate registers to have their name counted, and then only in cases where the write-in vote totals can impact the outcome of the race. And sometimes it's very apparent that the 10 write-in votes aren't going to impact the race, but there are township races in this county and others where indeed write-in ballots are very important and absolutely should be tallied. Expand direct absentee voting to 19 days before Election Day. You've seen how popular, if you walk through the halls of the courthouse prior to election, how popular this early voting has been, absentee voting. And it's still absentee voting, so it's still a little bit different process. But the one thing that we're asking to save time on is to allow people to take those absentee ballots that they have, and instead of putting them in one envelope, having them, and then putting them in another and having them signed, that they could, for 19 days before the election, feed them right into the ballot counter. The ballots are not counted until election night, but at least they don't have to, our staff does not have to open all of those envelopes and feed them in at the appropriate time. It would be a tremendous time savings, and the good thing for the voters is that if they put their ballot into a machine and they've done something wrong, it'll spit it back out and tell them that they did something wrong. And so then they have the assurance that they have a ballot that is actually going to be counted. The next one is under local government, and it has to do with our deputy register fees. We have assumed a greater burden of the work, and we would like to assume a greater portion of the funds that come when people are paying those fees. And the MNLARs and the rollout of the real and enhanced IDs has put an extra burden on counties and any deputy registrar's offices. And the confusion, and we've spent a lot of money on it. Last year there was a bill that would have reimbursed counties for some of that money. That probably is going to be back in the mix again because it was in the vetoed bill. And, but this formula is another thing that they're looking at. Also, we would like to ask for support for border-to-border broadband grants. And even though this is usually talked about as an issue for Greater Minnesota, it's still an issue in Scott County as well, in some of our rural and not even so rural areas. We have been the recipients of some of this grant money. Sand Creek Township received a grant, but there are still some underserved areas, especially out in the Blakely area in particular, but there's even some as close as Spring Lake Township. So this is still something that we would like to have the legislature fund, and we will continue to apply for grants as appropriate if the money is available. And then last but not least is an increase in appropriations to enhance our library services. We do get some funding from the state for that, but we haven't had a raise in that appropriation since 2009, so 10 years. And we think that it's time to kind of give a bigger push for that request and see if we can't get some more money for it. We know that, I think some people thought that libraries would maybe become dinosaurs of the past with all of the electronic opportunities we have. But if you go into any of our libraries, you see how well utilized they really are. There's a lot of people in there accessing the services and the materials that we have available there. And so we need to continue with the funding for operating them. That's for sure. And then we do have one more issue that came up just last week that I want to bring to your attention. I don't know if you'd like to include this or not, but Dakota County has asked us to consider supporting them in their request for a household hazardous waste collection facility near the border of Scott and Dakota counties. It's a bonding request though, so I don't know that there's a great deal of urgency for this year because I don't expect them to put together anything but an emergency bonding bill. But they said that they haven't located a site yet, but they would probably put it in Savage or Lakeville, somewhere near our border. They have none to serve the residents on that corner of their county. And I imagine that by having a regional request, it would be more palatable with legislators. It's something that they have yet to pass. They haven't passed their priorities. I think they're doing it in a week or two. But I don't know if it's something that you'd like to direct me to work with them on, or I know we just expanded our facility not too long ago, but it is located in the center of the county. And maybe Leslie has something she'd like to add.
Yes,
Madam
Leslie.
Chair, Commissioners, Paul is here, and I know he has been working with the environmental director at Dakota because we are probably underutilized in the Savage and the eastern part of the county as well. And so we've been supportive of looking at this with them, but they haven't gone down to a location or a ask from a capital standpoint. I don't know, Paul, if you have something to add to that.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, yes, we've been in conversation with staff at Dakota County about them building a facility on the western side of their county for about 6 months. Their current facility is located in Mendota Heights, and they have about half the space that we do, and they take about 10 times the waste. So they are really constrained and stretched. So they were looking at keeping that facility open and having something toward the west side, and the thoughts came that that would serve the eastern side of Scott County as well. It made some sense. Now, there's not as much urgency on our part because we just made some investment, but our growth in our facility is as you know, quite rapid. And so we did see some benefit. They were willing to lead it, do the property search, and the idea, the concept at least we were talking about is then we would provide them support funding in the future depending on the number of residents from Scott County that use the facility. They would upfront the capital costs and then we would be reimbursed based on use. The idea of now going to bonding is something that just came up within the last few weeks. But it is something from a partnership perspective that staff feels we would benefit from. Granted, not the same urgency on our side as on their side.
Great, thank you, Paul. Any other questions for Paul?
Madam Chair, as long as, I say Senator Roebling, as long as Claire is looking for some direction, as long as this site is going to be located in Savage, Commissioner District 1, I could be supportive of it, I suppose. But since there is no urgency, I think the direction would be to continue to develop the plan with Dakota County and bring it back to us in a workshop so we can consider it. Because I agree with you. I don't think there's going to be anything but an emergency bonding bill this year. Real urgencies, I don't see this as an emergency or urgency, but it would be good for us to have a little more information to flesh out the idea of what we're cooperating with them And I like Dakota County, I like cooperating with Dakota County. So thank you for the opportunity and partnership, but I think more info is needed.
Okay.
Savage is District 5, so
Oh, District 5.
put it in one.
Can I clarify one thing?
Yes.
Tongue firmly in cheek, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, they're looking at Burnsville and Lakeville,
Okay.
not Savage, so.
All right, Mr. Wolf.
Yeah, Claire, you know, with the whole new legislator and governor, this, the Metro County and Met Council, what are the chances of that moving forward?
With the Met Council?
Yeah, with our plan.
It's a mixed bag. We heard some comments from the new chair of the Met Council, who was newly named Nora Slawick, a former legislator, a colleague of mine, who I know quite well, and also the governor, acknowledging the problems that have existed and the tensions between the counties and the Met County, you know, with the form of governance that is currently in place. And actually, it was it was encouraging. They said they definitely want to look at that. And yet, I think we could definitely move something through the Senate. I'm not so sure about the House. That would be a bigger lift, but I am not saying it's impossible. Although last year, when we did pass both the House and the Senate and get the veto by the governor, the Democrats in the House were pretty firmly aligned against change. But they have so many new members, and a lot of them are suburban members. And so I don't rule it out completely that we should have the discussion. We need to bring it to the new members for sure. Yesterday, when I was up there for the Metro Parks meeting, we were meeting on the 5th floor of the state office building, and I walked around the 5th floor circle, and nobody was in there at all. The new staff couldn't even start until today, and there were nameplates on the doors. None of them that I recognized. There were a couple in the corner offices that are more senior members, but they must have put all the freshmen up there. And there are so many new members, but many from suburban communities. So we might be able to talk to them and reach out to them.
We have a couple, but right, the Shakopee and the Savage, but they would be taken away from the votes that we would have had last year, right? Because they're Democrats now?
Right.
So,
But on this issue, it's hard to say. I mean, I think we would ask them to consider it, certainly.
Definitely. Commissioner Beard.
Tell me, Dan.
Go ahead. I just want to add one more. You said when the ballots go in, you know, it'll kick it right out at you if it does, you know, but if you just have one, like if the presidential race, if just one of those is wrong, it doesn't kick out the whole ballot. You know, if you put it in for pre-voting, it just would not count that one race. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the primary, it would kick it out. In the general, it would give you a notification that the race has been overvoted or undervoted or.
Okay.
So if I send in an absentee ballot and I have one wrong, or, you know, I put 2 people for the governor, my whole ballot isn't going to be tossed. That's what I'm asking.
I think she was saying not if it was for
just for the primary,
the
but I'm
general.
talking general. Okay?
In the primary, if you crossed over on one
Yeah.
race, your whole ballot
You're
would be
done.
kicked
Yeah,
out.
that I know. But
Yes. But otherwise, it would just be for that
just
governor's
for that
race.
one. Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But it would let you know, it would
But
let you
people
know.
that send them in absentee ballot would not know.
No.
Get a chance.
No, that's why this change would be
So,
good.
right?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Claire, when is our legislature? It usually is a scale event. We have
Friday,
it's this Friday, so they've all been invited? Oh, good.
they're all coming too.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to hearing how the new kids, or the new legislators, will respond to some of our discussion. That's one thing. And then secondly, that's a good segue because it'll be a scale meeting on Friday.
Correct.
We should make it clear to the public that's watching at home that the Scott County legislative agenda is not necessarily the scale legislative agenda. Ours is a little more brief, for one thing. Theirs is 4 or 5 pages long. But just so that's clear, that the scale legislative agenda, although it overlaps in almost every area here, has a lot more on it.
That's correct. Because we're part of SCALE, we have included some of our top priorities with theirs. So there is some overlap, but then we have things from the cities and the townships and the school districts as well. And so theirs is more comprehensive as far as countywide interest. But there are some overlaps for sure. So we're looking at having a breakfast with our delegation and you. And I had tentatively set the 25th of January, which is a Friday morning. And now as I'm inviting, I've found two, Senator Pratt and one other have another commitment with the municipal electric, like the Shakopee Muni.
The utilities.
Yes, on that Friday morning. And so I don't know, we'll see how the others come in. It would be nice to have both of them present. And Friday mornings are good times for them to meet. They typically have no committee meetings on Fridays. And that's the day they do in-district work most often. And so I'll check with your availability some too, but we could go to February 1st would be another option too.
And to be clear, to close the loop on the SCALE meeting Friday with the legislators, is that still at City Hall in Prior Lake?
Correct. It will be at Prior Lake City Hall beginning at 7:30 in the morning.
That'll be a packed house there.
I expect it will be.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Beard. Any other comments for Claire? Any other requests for our legislative agenda? Yes,
Madam
Leslie.
Chair, Commissioner Ulrich, do you want us to clarify in transportation the two different, that it's the bonding request of supporting suburban transit and then the revision to the formula, so that's clear?
Well, I was gonna ask Luther to send over a little more background on those two, because I was asked to say a few words on those items. So I need to get a little more than we've got there.
Okay.
Would you like us to clarify the bonding? So technically, is that okay if we go and put some words?
Well, hasn't it been already printed, or?
No, we haven't. Oh, the scale book is printed.
Okay.
It just came yesterday. In
Okay.
fact, it's in our office.
Sure, okay.
But for our own
For
booklet.
Scott counties, though.
Well, I think, yeah, we probably need to double check.
We should clarify that.
Clarifying that.
Okay.
Any other comments, suggestions? I agree with Commissioner Beard about the Dakota Hazardous Waste Facility. I don't think it has a lot of urgency to be listed in our priorities this year, but I think in general, we want to hear more about it and learn about it. So I think a motion's in order to approve our legislative priority agenda here.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Madam Chair, I'll second that motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the legislative priorities as presented and as discussed, with the one change in the transportation area, the clarification. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to committee reports and commissioner updates. Commissioner Wolf, let's start with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the 19th, I had the Metropolitan Mosquito Control District, the MMCD, CD. That was their Truth in Taxation. I will be the outgoing chair of that committee. On the 20th, I had the Sheriff's Lunch. On the 27th, we had the reception for Greg Shelton, his outgoing partner, Gary Shelton.
Forgot his name already, huh?
That Shelton
It was in
guy.
the newspaper.
I'm just kidding.
Just kidding. Last night, Prior Lake City had their swearing in ceremony, and had a little meeting beforehand, and then Credit River Township had their monthly meeting, and Cedar Lake Township had their monthly meeting that I attended. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Beard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the 19th, Live, Learn, Earn, Post-Secondary, that was my first meeting with them. It was a very good, dynamic meeting. A lot of different points were discussed early on. Later that night, met with the Shakopee mayor and manager. I thought that was also with our new administrator as well. You were also in attendance. A very good meeting. Anytime you look across the table and have discussions with people is a good thing, and I was grateful we were able to have that meeting. On the 20th, I was somehow able to miss both lunches, the sheriff and the law. And you know that sound when the cord, when you're unplugging the crock pot and the cord hits that tin, you know that all the meatballs are gone? I got to experience both of those. Came late on both those. But anyway, on the 27th, we had a abbreviated pre-chair, vice chair meeting, I'll call it. Also, I was able to go to Greg's / Gary's retirement. That was a great time. It was a sweet time just to both kind of rib them a little bit and honor them. And, you know, we've got these TV cameras. We've got this TV station set up over here. What I found out is if any of the late night funny guys retire, we've got our own Dick Mulcrone that we can get up here behind the microphone and maybe host one of those right here in Scott County. It was a very entertaining night. On the 7th, as was mentioned, Prior Lake City Council had their swearing in and their annual meetings. Was there for that and their workshop as well. And then this morning with you, Madam Chair, their new employee orientation. And that ends my report.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Beard.
Since I saw you last, I've been traveling all over the country, but in the meantime, I've been able to attend the Mosquito Control Board's Truth and Taxation meeting and had the pleasure of working for the last 2 years with Commissioner Wolf as chair. They are expeditious meetings. This is true. So I can hardly wait to see how much they slow down with the new chair. And then by the way, we spent about $18 million, I think was the levy this year, to kill a whole lot of mosquitoes. It's in the billions. Money well spent, in my humble opinion. And on the 20th, I did make it in time for the judge's potluck courthouse Christmas. Commissioner Beer, it was delicious. Everything I ate was incredible. There were no calories. They made a ruling over there that everything was fat-free. And we just had a great time just being friends and neighbors and celebrating the season. And then I left town, Madam Chair, so I missed Administrator Shelton's going away party, which is really unfortunate because I bought a special Make Christmas Great Again sweater to wear for it. And I'm sorry, I'll have to save it for another occasion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Beard. Commissioner Elric.
On the 19th, I attended the bi-monthly meeting with the city representatives, with the mayor and administrator. And on the 19th, also the Transportation Advisory Board. It's interesting there. We're dealing with the regional solicitation where projects are scored and it's determined what projects will be winners and receive funding and which ones will not receive funding. MBTA was on the bubble. They had scored for a project connector routes to the Orange Line. Orange Line is the bus rapid transit going down 35W, and they had a project, like I say, that was picking up people from like the Burnsville Center and other connection points to feed into that. That was on the bubble, and they actually were not going to receive, it was $2.7 million funding, because they were kind of pushing things around and they wanted to see a project in Minneapolis and St. Paul funded instead. And well, anyhow, we had a debate. I was involved in a debate over this, and it ended up being that MBTA got $1.5 million. And had we not had the debate, they would not have gotten anything. So I was thankful that ended up to fund some of those connectors, because it's important to do what we can to make these corridors successful, and the connections to that route are important. 27th, Gary Shelton's retirement, and I know Gary's probably really super bored right now, so hi, Gary.
Hi, Gary. Yeah. He's watching, I bet.
He's not awake yet.
Anyhow, January 3rd, administrator meeting with new administrator, and then the 4th, the Scale Executive Committee. That's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. For my report, on December 19th, I had a breakfast meeting with our newly elected state legislator, Brad Tapke. Really just wanting to open up the communications. We did talk quite a bit, Administrator Vermillion, as you said, about him being a suburban legislator. Let's not talk necessarily about being a Democrat or Republican, representing the suburban area, and it was good. I felt it was a good meeting. Later that day with Commissioner Beer and Administrator Vermillion, we met with the Mayor of Shakopee and the City Administrator about some ongoing issues and work with the city and the county. On the 20th, I was able to attend the judge's holiday luncheon, but I got so full I didn't make it across the street to the sheriff's luncheon. I'll have to start over there next year. And then that evening was the Scott County Library Board of Trustees meeting. We met out at Elko New Market Library, which was fun because I don't get to that library very often otherwise. On December 27th, we had the abbreviated pre-chair, I like how you labeled that, pre-chair, pre-vice chair meeting. And then that evening, Gary's retirement party, which was very nice, well-attended, and well-deserved. On January 2nd, not really official county business, but I attended the funeral of a longtime employee, Roger Schainbauer. He worked in our transportation department, road maintenance, plowed the road I live on, Marystown Road, for lots and lots of years. He was a long-term, dedicated employee. When I visited with him a couple weeks before he passed, he talked about being on the interview committee that hired you the first time, Leslie. And so it was fun to reminisce, and I'm glad I got to see him before he died. And it was a very dedicated county employee. On January 3rd, had lunch with Ron Hosevar. He told me to follow the rules and obey the law when I'm chairing the board meeting. Also that evening, I attended a retirement party for Gloria Wolf. Gloria worked for Scott County University of Minnesota Extension for the last 24 years in nutrition education. Her position was fully funded by federal SNAP dollars to try and help people who are on food assistance make better decisions about eating, avoid those donuts and muffins, I guess. And so I know Commissioner Beard appreciated her work. That evening on January 3rd, I attended Louisville Township meeting here in this room. They were dealing with some gravel mining going on as part of the 16941 project, had some business owners there, and had their annual meeting. On January 4th, I spent some time in St. Paul with some other county commissioners and county social services directors talking about the new Families First federal initiative that Minnesota and all the counties will need to be adhering to in the next year. And then yesterday, I guess, January 7th, I spent the morning at New Prague High School and spoke to about 200 ninth graders about our Future Leaders Day. Jennifer Schultz, spent the rest of the day there. We had about 150 more to go through. Just want to encourage my fellow commissioners to make sure you're signed up for those Future Leaders Day presentations. They're coming up in the next month. Futures Leader Day is on April 26th. And then yesterday afternoon was in St. Paul again for AMC MAXA joint meeting to discuss legislative priorities around child well-being, some other human services initiatives. And then this morning, welcome the new employees, one who's still here watching us, so thank you, that's great. All right, that's the end of my report. Administrator Vermillion, you have any updates or reports for us?
Yes, just a reminder that on the 21st, all the county buildings will be closed for Martin Luther King Day. And then we have the January 29th workshop, and that will actually be at the Prior Lake Library. So it's an effort to get you folks out to some of our other facilities and a chance to see. I think the library staff will use about 10 minutes that day to show you some of their key areas and programs as well. So looking forward to that.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, County Attorney, any need to recess for attorney-client meeting?
We do not. All right.
Good. Let's keep it that way. All right. Any further business to come before the board?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, same sign.
No.
Seriously? Okay. Motion carried.
Just being crabby.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.